Welcome back. Today is going to be all about embroidery. Now, you've seen me working on this piece on and off for a little bit, and I started down this end with the silky threads. And whilst I thought it was very beautiful, I thought it was a little too fancy and a little too formal for an everyday dress. And I want this to be the neckline of an everyday dress. So after much procrastination, I picked a new palette of DMC threads and I have now worked down to the middle bit. So you can see this flower is where I want it to go and this flower with the sequins is where I was going. So it's not that this isn't beautiful. I love it. It's just not the look that I wanted. And what I have found during this process is that the embroidery is teaching me and I'm learning certain things as I go along. And it's also correlating with some big life stuff that's going on for me. And I find that hilarious in a lovely kind of way that that is really happening. Now, all of you that do tambour will know that if you pull the right thread, all your stitches that you've just spent hours and hours putting in unravel very quickly, like that was. But what I have found with this piece is it's not. You see, I've got to a point and it should just be flowing and it's stuck. And I have to take that into uh, consideration, I guess, because I am choosing to leave a part of my old life behind and start a new chapter. But I'm finding that I'm quite attached to this old life. And although I'm ready to move on, like I was with this part, I'm not quite ready and I'm delaying and procrastinating and have been for 3 months. And also unraveling or undoing the old life has not been as straightforward. So I just thought I would pull one of these threads and all of this hours and hours of work would just pull out very quickly. And as you can see, it's not. I had to undo one of these the other day and it took hours just to undo one little bit. It's like, oh my goodness. So yeah, I love it actually when my embroidery mirrors my life and teach me lessons um, as I navigate through different issues. So I won't bore you with the undoing. I was hoping I could amaze you by pulling one thread and showing you how hours and hours of work just disappeared, but it's just not happening today. So what are my learnings through this? Let's talk about the practical stuff. So for the new embroidery, I just used a mix of DMC and anchor threads. Now, this is not something I do a lot in Tambour because I actually prefer the silky threads when I can use the more metallics. But I did want that everyday look for this. So what I've had to do is cut lengths. I've worked with a single strand um, of DMC. And there's pros and cons to it. You can see here my used one. So normally I don't work with more than 50 centimeters of DMC thread at a time, but with this one, I've worked with much, much, much longer threads so that I wasn't having to start and finishing. Normally, I prefer to work off of a roll of threads so that I just start stitching and I can fill the whole, excuse me, whole element in without having to stop and start. One of my pet hates is weaving the tails in when I've started and finished tambour. So I like to not have to start and finish too often. So I've got this little tray here with all of these, partially separated bits. And it's taken me a little bit for each element to learn the length, the ideal length of thread. I did find that trying to unravel or split one strand out of the 6 strands of cotton here when the thread was much longer than I'd normally work with, just tangled. So I had to be very slow, very patient when pulling it out. And I'm not a very patient person. And then the other learning that I had was that I don't like wasting thread. So I would just keep stitching with the DMC thread. Let's see if I can find a spot where you'll be able to see. Here. And normally I would finish the thread down the bottom here. So I never want to finish my thread up here because I want to get really nice clean apexes. I don't want to cast off knot here. But at first that conditioned part of me that says, no, I can't waste, 10 centimeters worth of thread. So I was starting to cast off in the middle of a row instead of coming down here. And now in several sections, I've got these lumps in the middle that I don't like. I don't know if you can, the camera can pick that up. There you go. You can see my cast off. Oops, that's a little thread underneath, but you can see my cast off thread right in the middle of that element, which, really isn't terribly nice. So I had to challenge myself that to keep an eye, I had to remain more present when I was stitching because all of a sudden I would run out of thread if I let my mind wander too much. And I would have to make a conscious choice to finish off my thread at the end rather than trying to use every little bit. And I know that that sounds pretty basic, and some of you might be saying, yeah, like, what's your problem? But to me, it was really challenging because I don't like wasting thread and it just felt wrong. So this correlates to many things in my life where I think things should be a certain way, not because they're right or wrong, but just because that's how I've always done it, or that's how I was taught to do it. So that's been a little interesting journey. So yes, you can tambour with DMC thread. It works really, really well. You just have to work out what the ideal length of thread is for you to work with. I guess the other thing I want to talk about is letting go. Letting go. This is how I've always stitched in the past, and I love it. Actually, let's see if I can undo this bit while I'm talking to you. But it didn't feel resonant for me anymore, and it certainly didn't feel resonant for this piece. So I had to go into new territory, and you know what? It was super uncomfortable for me. I have been working on this piece on and off, mainly off, for months and months. It was supposed to be my winter project because it's a summer dress. And I've decided now that I can't possibly wear anything else on Christmas Day. This has to be my new Christmas dress for this year. And so there's a rush now to not only get the embroidery finished, but then I have to construct the dress as well. So it's just interesting to watch my patterns coming up and be kind and compassionate to myself. It's like, okay, just because this is how you've always done it doesn't mean this is how it has to be done moving forward. Or the things that, oh, here we go. Look at that. That's how it all should be happening. Sequins just popping off like that in 2 seconds. Look at my beautiful French sequins. I love them. All right, but obviously I used a different thread, or did I? Yeah, so the flower's not coming off. That must have been done with a different thread. So yeah, just observing myself, being kind and compassionate as I come up against resistance to letting go of how I've always done things, but challenging myself to grow and expand and try some new things, try the unknown, try something different. And it's not that working with the DMC thread was not ideal, it was just different. Or I can tell myself the story that no, it wasn't ideal, and that I much prefer working with, solid rolls of thread because I don't have to start and finish all the time. So for me, there's always that choice point. Am I going to stick to an old story of limitation, or am I going to open my mind to approaching things differently? I'm a very black and white person, and one of my growing edges this lifetime has been to live more in the grey. There's lots of shades of grey in life, it's never black and white. And the older I get, even when I'm teaching, I will say to my students, well, this is what I learned from Lesage, or this is what I learned from Hand and Lock. Um, and I'll show you both of those ways, and then you can decide whether that's the right way for you or you want to adapt it. When I watch my Tambour students cast on and cast off, not one of them does it in the same way, and most of them don't do it the way that I do it. So there's always room for learning and growing and having respect for those traditions, but then taking your creativity into a way that works best for you. See, I can't find this little thread that I can pull and it all just magically comes out again. So this is going to be a long unpicking job. Probably a good week's worth if it's going to be like this, because I'm only stitching at night and a little bit on Sundays on this piece. So I'll leave you there, I think, with my partial transition between my old life, my new life, letting go of the old, making room for the uncomfortableness or the newness of the new way of doing things or being, or new life situations. And yeah, just being kind and gentle with yourself if you're going through something similar, or maybe questioning yourself if you're still repeating the old way you've always expressed your creativity and you're feeling a bit bored or stagnant with it. Doesn't mean you don't love it. Oh, here we go. I got a thread. Oh, no, we didn't. It stopped. Um, yeah, it might be time to challenge yourself and look at new ways of doing things and new materials that you can still, my stitching was still basically the same, a little bit different with DMC thread, but not a lot. But I get a very, very different look, and I'm really, really happy with it. I watched an episode of Poirot, and there was an actress, actually Elizabeth Montgomery, I think it was. Oh no, I think I've just said the wrong name. The actress that plays Cora in Downton Abbey. This was an old Poirot, and she was wearing this amazing embroidered vest that had a similar design to this on. And I saw that years ago, and then I watched it again recently, and it's like, oh yes, that's why I wanted to do this style of embroidery, because it reminded me, and I was inspired by that particular vest. So that's always a lovely feeling too, when, years before you saw something that you felt inspired by, and then at some point in the future, even if it is years later, you're actually taking action on that inspiration and making it real and adapting it to fit you, your lifestyle, and your creative expression. So hopefully that was of interest to you and is making you think a little bit deeper about what's present for you at the moment. Hope it was helpful, and I will see you next week, and this will all be unpicked by then. Okay, from my heart to yours, have a great week. Bye for now.